Hey, welcome to the Thriving Life podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Huff, and today we're talking about transcending major amounts of stress and overwhelm. Uh, it's all about how to do that. I didn't say it would be, uh, you know, the process can be simple and fluid, but as I know oh too well, and as probably you know oh too well, the process also causes a lot of reactivity. And in transcending stress and reactivity and overwhelm, most people want to do it really fast. And in order for it to be fluid, your mind kind of has to have peace about what the process is. And it might not be fast, it might take a long time. And sometimes it can take a short time. It just depends on how deep-seated, how much, if there was any PTSD involved, and you gotta know the right kinda help to get when you're really, really stressed out or you have something that's been hanging with you for a long time. So, today we're gonna talk about what that process might be, and I'm gonna remind everybody, if you truly are in a state of trauma or experiencing some major, major issues that are starting to cause health issues in your life, definitely seek professional help. You want to get yourself to a professional to give you the information and the feedback that you need. In the meantime, let's see if we can give it all context so that maybe you can find some spaciousness and some peace of mind in your journey. All right. I do want to let you know that this entire podcast today is brought to you by our Agents of Awakening community. That community is a place where different thinkers, unicorns, bridge builders, people, badass bridge building superheroes hang out, and where we commune about what is that thriving operating system. How do we embody that thriving operating system? And how do we live in total flow? You can join Agents of Awakening community at agentsofawakening.com. All right, onward to the podcast, my beautiful friends. Again, if you're just joining us, what I recommend is that into the chat, into the comment field, say hi, give us your name, where you're coming from, what your theme is of the day, what you're up to, and we'll see if we can integrate some of that into our podcast today. All right, you guys, off we go. Happy to have you here, wherever you're hailing from. Happy to have you here. So some of the ways that you know that you've been taking in too many stressful events into your life, or perceiving things as difficult, or actually having a sense that life is all too much, or maybe that you're a little bit too reactive, is by looking at our nervous system and our adrenal glands. And there are symptoms that tell us that we're taking on too much of the stress of the world, that we've been that our coping mechanisms are not enough, that we aren't getting the help we need, whether from within or from without, whether we need more spaciousness, whether we're not honoring ourselves, whether we're carrying the stress of other people, and we haven't grown ourselves big enough in our skill sets or have enough help to be able to process it all without glands and organs and symptoms starting to arise. Your nervous system and your adrenal glands will give you a little bit of a clue as to whether that is so or not. And I'm going to give us all a quiz right now to see where you are on this spectrum. It's a quiz about your adrenal glands to tell you how much of the how much the events around you have been really affecting you. And that maybe it's going to give you, this little quiz is going to give you a sign that you might need to get a new perspective, which hopefully we can help with today. Here's the quiz. So get a little pen and a paper, and let's talk about the signs that your adrenals and your nervous system are on overload. One, that you get head and neck tension. So you get neck and shoulder, sometimes headaches, but neck and shoulder for sure. That's one. See if you get a check mark there. Second one is that you actually find yourself reactive, negative, reactive. You jump on the people that you love when you know they didn't really deserve it. That's a sign that your adrenals are a little bit in overload. Even when you jump on colleagues and people you work with. Third is you find yourself having really, really strong senses that you have tons of energy, but then you're exhausted afterwards. In other words, you don't really have too much in the tank. You can push yourself and kind of manufacture the adrenaline, but then it goes away. Third is you need a coffee first thing in the morning. You need a jump start. Or 2 or 3, or in some of the people I've talked to in their cases, 5 or 7, you know? So I can't imagine having that much coffee. I do remember though, when I worked for Procter& and Gamble, I had never I didn't drink coffee in my life because my parents were coffee drinkers, and it was free. And I started drinking it, and it was like chocolate milk to me. I put so much sugar and so much milk in it. It was delicious. And I remember I got up to about 5 and I started having the jitters. And I realized, oh, this is what coffee does. so so that's one of them. Next is that when you're doing a task and you kind of know when the task is going to be ended and you have an expectation, when it takes longer than you think, it's like you've got nothing left in the tank to do something with it. Another interesting one is around you crave salty, crunchy things like potato chips. So when your adrenals are stressed out, because you utilize more salt. Okay. And finally, sometimes when your adrenals are overloaded, you can find not only are you edgy, but your eyesight isn't as good. You're squinting a little bit more. In the long run, it can definitely affect your night vision and a bunch of things like that. I think that's a good enough list for today. You can see if you have more than 3 of them, you're probably pushing your nervous system a little bit too hard, or taking things on too much. I would say that there's 3 kinds of stress that I want to address. One is acute stress that's in the immediate, where you witness something that is different than you were expecting. And I always say that the true stress happens when there's a dissonance between what you expect and what actually happens. There's what you wish was, and then there's what actually is. And there's only 2 ways of changing that. You either change what you wish was, or you change what is. Give you an example. Let's say I'm expecting to get out of my driveway, but all of a sudden, because I always get out of my driveway, but all of a sudden, for some reason, there's road work on my street this week. And they've literally blocked off my driveway, and I need to get to a meeting. So what I wish was that they weren't there and that I could get to my meeting on time. What is that they're blocking my driveway. And so either what happens is I change the meeting time, right? So or I ask them to move and let me out, right? So that's changing what is. Or I change my expectation. I change the other person's expectation who I'm meeting, and you just say, "Hey, listen, you know, stuff happens, and I got a bunch of construction to my person that I'm meeting, and if you can they say they're going to be 20 minutes. Are you okay with that?" And so now what I've done is I've adapted my perception. I don't have my shorts in a knot anytime and still, so I've changed my perception. And it can happen with family members, how they behave at Christmas dinner or a holiday meeting, a holiday gathering. And, your expectation is that Uncle Charlie should be this way. And then he maybe gets really drunk and behaves not so great. And, you know how it goes. You either walk out of the house or you spend more time with the dogs and the kids, or you kick out Uncle Charlie, or so that's acute kind of stress. It's the kind of stress that's right in front of you. The second kind of stress is stress that comes from a long-standing protective mechanism or control mechanism that came from something that triggered your amygdala from this life or from past life, and you're trying to keep everything safe for yourself. So it's like an event that's stuck in your amygdala, it's stuck in your memory, it's stuck in your brain. And every time that kind of event happens, you actually get triggered. And there's two ways of dealing with that. You either work with someone to reframe the event in the past so that it doesn't trigger you anymore, or you have observational, you have things that you can observe differently in the immediate, such that you change your behavior, right, around those kinds of events. Of course, the long-term best way to shift it is to change your relationship to the originating event. The other way you can deal with something like that is you completely shift your entire paradigm about life, which is what I love to do, is help people shift the entire way they look at life such that it automatically reframes all of the stressful events in our life. It's not spiritually bypassing. Um, it's actually re-perceiving hundreds of issues at a time, which is how we work. For the issues that are available to our technology, it's really powerful. And sometimes something that was so traumatizing that definitely it needs a special kind of help. Third is you have a moral compass or an indoctrination into a political belief, a religious belief, a where you live in the world belief, a cultural belief, or whatever it is. And then something doesn't occur like the belief systems that you've been enrolled into. And when it looks different, there's a judgment and it causes stress. Could even be about your body. All of a sudden you're menopausal and you have a belly and you're like, wait a second, I don't get bellies. What happened here? Right. And there's that kind of stress. But it could also be, I know when I went to India, you don't you don't show your you don't put your feet facing someone, and you don't shake hands with your like you don't use your left hand for stuff because it there's a cultural reason why, which I know, which I'm not going to explain, but they're both considered disrespectful, and so it could cause some disturbances in the field, right? And so those are some other things that can cause stress. What I want to share with you is that you cannot spiritually bypass any of these forms of stress. And some of you listening right now might think, what are you talking about? Yes, you can. You could totally spiritually bypass. No, no. As we talked about in our recent quantum leap workshop, you can only spiritually postpone anything that is in your way. You can only spiritually postpone. You cannot spiritually bypass because it's going to come back around. If there's a way of being or a particular trigger in your life that causes your eye to twitch, and how you behave is trying to control your situation or trying to um, manipulate the situation to be more acceptable to you, or you have a reaction or whatever the case may be, I promise you that trigger or that part of you that reacts to what's going on over there is going to come up more than once. And you cannot work your way around it because your life will just get more miserable. And excuse me, depending on how much misery, excuse me, depending on how much misery you're willing to put up with, you can't bypass it because miserable. And then you either address it or you don't. Like if you don't, it'll just get more miserable still. So it's like a redirect from life to actually have to look at that which continues to happen. Sometimes it might be a pain that won't go away. Sometimes it might be something that keeps coming up in your marriage. And you always have to look at yourself, not the other person. That's the thing about stress and trauma. It's not about the other person. It's always about your magnetics and what's happening with you. I know we love it to be about the other person, but it never is. It's always about what you need to change, especially if it's a theme that keeps coming up in your life. Okay, so remember that based on physics and the laws of magnetics, you are always attracting based on what you're used to, what your familial experience is. You are a magnetic being. It's not always a pleasant thing to hear that, and some people hear it like, oh, blame the victim. But it's about healing. And as we heal, we stop being afraid of the past happening again. And so then we're no longer vigilant for the past happening again. Then all of a sudden we could get excited and start creating the life we want rather than living our life from protecting ourselves from the past. An example of that is a client I have right now whose mom was very narcissistic. His mom was extremely narcissistic, very self-centered. And what happened in his with his girlfriend, who he's had for the last 3 years, is that he didn't even know that he was projecting on her that, like, he just had disdain for her all the time. All the time, not all the time, but he just had this disdain that would come up from her just being a woman, like just being a woman, just doing her thing. And this disdain would cause him to just lash out at her probably, every couple of months. And he would be surprised because he loves her and he doesn't understand why it was happening. And he didn't even recognize that he had this sort of latent disdain for his mother, constantly needing him to be something for her so that she could be happy. Right? And so what it started to look like to him is that she started to look like a narcissist when she's the furthest thing from that. She's very generous, very kind, a good person, but his eyes had been so skewed by his relationship with his mother that he heard everything like she was a narcissist. Oh, and I want to add something that's really interesting that I came to yesterday. Very interesting. That when we get frustrated with someone, or when we get angry with someone, or when we get stressed out at a situation, we're not actually angry at them. We're actually upset and stressed out about a perception that they have the capacity to take us out of our connection to the flow that we're in. So it's giving our power away to someone else. And the perception is that they have the power to take away our connection to our own flow and to our own guidance. It's not that they will. It's that actually giving them the power to do that and then being really angry that they might. And then the reaction becomes to not to what they're actually doing, because if we were in our power, nobody could ever take that away. You get what I'm saying? So the issue is not what's actually going on, it's our fear that they could. And so that's why we get very reactionary to certain people that we love, because we've given the power to potentially take away our power, which is ridiculous. So the work always comes back to you. This is another way of saying the work always comes back to you, feeling empowered yourself, doing your walks, going for the, meditations that you need to do that always make you feel good. Making sure you take the break to play with the dog, making sure you, whatever it is that puts you back in your place of power, doing something that you love to do. Maybe you love, I don't know, maybe you want to take Aikido or, just get back in your power and feel good about your life. I love to dance. I haven't been doing it. I probably should get to some dance lessons. In fact, it's on my list this week. So, am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense here. The thing that causes the most stress for anyone is when life doesn't go as we expect, but then we judge ourselves about our reaction to it and about the actual what's happening. So if you want it to be effortless and easy, the very first thing to do is to just understand that's like judging the judgment. Something that's hard is already happening, and now you're going to judge yourself that it happened. The design, remember how I said earlier about our work is around paradigm shifts. Well, if you're a creator, there are always going to be catalysts to your creation. And those catalysts, 95% of the time, are going to occur like difficulty or something isn't working quite the way you want. I want you to know that as a creator consciousness, you're not here to coast. You're here to create. You're here to bring things to more evolved ways of doing them or relating to them. That's what you're here for. If that's the truth, creation by definition has to have a catalyst. Like it literally has to have something that isn't working in order to create upon it and make it even better. So if you could actually embody the idea that life is just that way, now all of a sudden you stop judging the catalysts. There's nothing wrong. There's just something that's catalyzing you to expand. I wonder what would happen. And I'm telling you, it is the biggest shift in my life. Falling in love with the contrast, knowing full well that I have the wherewithal. And if I don't, I have the people to talk to. I mean, that's why we have our community, Agents of Awakening. It's a place you can go to actually be able to commune with others and have a monthly call and talk about what's up and move through what you're moving through. Instead of being a lone wolf, you can move through it together, right? So the point is, it's in the design of life. Have you designed your life so you can move through those things with ease and flow? If that's the way life is, just assume it and stop being stressed out by it. Stop trying to get to a place where you're just happy all the time. It's just not how life is. Life is meant to be created upon, which means there are going to be in the design things that make your eyes twitch. And when you're experiencing something that's difficult, get really curious about your ways of being, your habitual, defaults that have your thoughts be that way, or your pain levels be that way, or your body be that way. And then instead of just saying, oh, I need to exercise more or something, go and talk to someone about why you don't, or why you keep stopping. Like, what is the mechanism in the background, right? In Agents of Awakening, we have a monthly way to have those conversations. So we just keep transmuting and transcending with speed and efficiency so we can stay in our flow and on track. I can't remember who said this to me. It was way back when. I'm sure it was 25 years ago, but they were talking about, you're a tomato plant. And I'm like, I'm a tomato plant. What are you talking about? They say, you're a tomato plant. Okay. Tomato plant. There we are with Agents of Awakening. So Agents of Awakening is the place that I was just speaking about, guys. It's the place, I mean, there's so many benefits to it, but most certainly that is one of them. So tomato plant, I'm a tomato plant. What the heck does that mean? Well, when you plant the seed of a tomato plant, don't you get excited for what's next? And then when the sprout finally comes up, don't you go like, oh my God, that is so cool. Look, there's a little sprout. I can't believe this little thing is going to end up having like 20 tomatoes on it. And then it starts growing and it has the little green ones. And it's like, oh my God, there's green ones. I got to put it closer to the window. I want them to ripen. And then they're not quite there. You see what I mean? But what the most important thing in this conversation is that if we were to treat ourselves the same way we treat a tomato plant, it would be like, oh my God, I planted the seed. It's been a day later. Where the hell is the sprout? And then the sprout comes out and we would be like, ugh, it still doesn't have the little green things yet. When's it going to be big enough? Like, man, wrong kind of water. Do I need to get some plant food? I mean, what is wrong? And then it gets green tomatoes. And then we're like, oh man, and then we make that wrong. Imagine treating yourself like every stage of the way, even though it's not what's next, every evolution is the miracle, right? And I want to give you this perspective, and definitely join me live every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time. And I'll be answering the question next time. What if you could harmonize your body's energy fields for optimal health? What now? That's what we're doing next week. But before we go, I wanted to give you one last little analogy. And that is, you walk down the street, you see a hole, you fall in to the hole, and you complain about it the whole time. That would be chapter 1 of a book. Chapter 2 of someone's life is, you walk down the street, you fall into the hole, you complain about it, then you yell at some people, they tell you how to get out, and you figure out how to get out. And then you fall in it again because you forgot where it was. Chapter 3 is, you walk down the street, you fall in the hole, you remember how to get out, you get out, and it's like, I'm good. Chapter 4 is, you walk down the street, you see the hole coming, and you go around the hole. But what I'm really interested is in supporting myself and other people in walking down the street that's different, named different, in a totally different direction with no holes, right? You walk down a different street. Now, there may be something you trip on that street, and you'll go through the same process until you actually, it's like, oh, I got it. It's called embodiment. When you embody kind of a new street and a new street and a new street, right? I wonder if we could do that process so quickly that we hardly even notice holes anymore. And on that note, my friends, that is how we effortlessly start to move through stress. Of course, in a half-hour podcast, we can only get to a certain, contextualizing it, activating as to how it looks. I really look forward at some point having the opportunity to calibrating you to being able to live in a way that embodies always going down streets that exhilarate you and long before you see the holes. Till next time, friends, we'll see you on the next podcast. Can't wait to talk about the body.